Good morning, good morning. The DLR is working, you're all here. Thank you for coming to World Travel Market, and may I, on behalf of the show, welcome you. My name is Steve Keenan. I'm Travel Perspective, half of. The other half is Mark Frary, who's sitting over there. We used to be journalists, we used to be newspaper journalists. Remember those? A long time ago. We left the Times in 2011, 2012. Set up Travel Perspective when social media was a new thing. That worked itself out. We then tried influencers. That's worked itself out. So we moved on to the latest trends in social media, which we'll present to you this year. So our 9th year of doing the social media sessions at World Travel Market. It has evolved so much in that time. And we are going to present 13 sessions during the next 3 days of all the individual aspects of social media as it now stands. Winding up on Wednesday afternoon with the best of social media, always a very popular session where we present 6 projects from destinations around the world and how they use social media now, and we'll present the results. But first off today, I am very delighted to have Dr. Chris, his name has disappeared, Notes, from Culture Trip. A Culture Trip, I'm sure, who put your hands up? Who knows of Culture Trip? Who's aware of it? Who's used it? Good. We've got an audience about 70% knowledgeable, 30% willing to learn, which is fantastic. Culture Trip, then, as you probably know, well, as you will know, uses original content and social media to seamlessly sell travel online. Culture Trip reaches in excess of 20 million users per month and is one of the top 3 brands, travel brands on Facebook. Its inspirational content-led social media channels offer users a vast array of content, including new articles, the latest series of video destination guides, and reviews of hotels, which are increasingly becoming bookable online, which I'm sure Chris is going to touch on. Very interesting that using good content to sell travel is what everybody wants to do. Chris is going to explain that. But it's all about the psychology of delivering quality, offbeat and surprising content to engage readers who are then invited to experience travel destinations by booking seamlessly online. I'd like you to welcome to the stage Dr. Chris Nuntz of Culture Trip. Please put your hands together. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Steve, for the kind introduction. I first came here 8 years ago as a psychiatrist who had started a bookshop, an online bookshop. Nobody knew us. I mean, if we had asked a raise of hands, the number of hands would have been 0. Last year I came back and the raise of hands was, I think, about 20%. So really nice to see that now 70% of you are actually familiar or at least have heard of Culture Trip. For those of you who haven't and for those of you who have, I just would like to show you a very short video, bringing it again a little bit top of mind, what it is we do.
Culture Trip empowers people to explore the world's kaleidoscope of cultural differences via our website, app, social channels, and emerging technology. We connect people with local culture through our international community of content creators, a network of hundreds of writers, photographers, videographers, illustrators, and animators, based in inspiring locations all around the world. Our fast-growing audience are switched-on, independent, mature millennials. We motivate them to explore different locations, perspectives, trends, and ideas, to learn more, do more, see more, experience more. Join us on a culture trip.
So do have another look during this talk or after this talk, because I feel, and we all feel, that the product is getting better and better. We have an audience to back up that claim. Our growth in users has been actually pretty insane. From a relatively standing start in 2015, we flew up to nearly 20 million people who every month come to our website. More than 2 million people, actually pushing for 2.5 million people have downloaded the app. And a lot of you, I think, this was probably the first point of contact with Culture Trip, would be one of those 7 million followers we have across social media. A year ago, 2 years ago, if you went to a dinner party or any event, that's where most people would have seen us. Now it starts to go far wider. They may have picked us up, or you might have picked us up via our newsletter. You might have seen us in search when you Google around for a destination. Penetration is very, very high. And video views is something that I am particularly excited about, that we as a company are very excited about. Again, from no knowledge whatsoever about video, we managed to get about 2 billion views on the videos that our amazing team is creating. 2 billion views in the past 2 years. Very proud of that, and very proud of the team that helped deliver this. So what is our content? We cover pretty much the whole world. Some destinations, of course, in more detail than others. It spreads over 275, or it aggregates around those 275 locations. And it's a combination of articles, as you will have seen, videos, but also top-notch photography, illustration, animation. So really upping the creative ante here, I would say, and covering the world increasingly with content that you can use to plan your trip, and as Steve mentioned in the introduction, also book your trip and do the whole experience with us. Who makes it? People in-house. I mean, we have about 275, 300 people across 3-4 offices. The bulk of us is here in London, about 200. It's a smaller team in New York, and there's an engineering and tech team in Tel Aviv. And we start to sort of explore a little bit what it is we can do in Mandarin to the Chinese market. Our users like us, really amazing actually, particularly in the app. The feedback is astonishing. I think we have a rating of 4.9. So people still and increasingly find a use case for what we do. We won awards for the app, and we won awards throughout. Again, really interesting for us as a workforce and as a company. We were nowhere, nobody knew us, and now in the past year I think we've won more than 20 awards. It's been really encouraging and really motivating, I think, for the team. And as I said, the users like really what we do. So we've won awards across a number of things, for the brand, for the marketing, for our content of course, and again it helps with awareness, I feel, in the trade. Because we do content so well, and because we do creative content at scale pretty much for every destination, we started to build a media sales team who brings branded content campaigns to the market. So we partner with tourism boards, we partner with travel brands and lifestyle brands, and we, with all our content, can actually really shine a spotlight on your destination or your brand and deliver an audience to it. And we can do that in any content format, be it articles, be it video, be it photography, across the whole range of platforms that we have. So these are just some examples. We did a very nice campaign with Visit Macau. We made an amazing film, I believe, that the sales team that is here will talk to various people about. We made an amazing film about the 3 Sohos. There's a Soho in London, as I'm sure you all know. There's one in New York, and perhaps a somewhat lesser known one in Hong Kong. And it's an amazing long-form video, which of course I don't have the time to show you, but hopefully some of our media sales team can talk to you about that. So these are the people that are here. They will be at the exit towards the end of the talk if you want to indeed explore partnerships with them. And they'll be waving magazines. So one of the old school things we've actually done is launch a magazine. We don't retail it in the shops, but we distribute it across hotel lounges and other partners. Beloved really by our staff, and very much appreciated and liked as well by whoever manages to lay their hands on it. So there will be copies here available. We make it also part of our branded content offering. So Henry can talk in detail about that. This is another part I think that some of you will know. I'm by background a psychiatrist. As said, this whole thing started with a bookstore, which I'm sure you know, and I should have known back then, was a very bad idea because there's an Amazon. It didn't work. We started to produce content about books and films. It worked a little bit better, but still didn't work very well. it was interesting to be here with that bookstore. People didn't understand what I was talking about. I kept saying books, and people kept saying bookings, and it was not going anywhere. So we increasingly produced content, first about books and films, then about more visual material. That was a key unlocker, I would say, of growth. As soon as we climbed at least a little bit out of our ivory tower, the audience grew much faster. Until about, I think, 2 years in, we started to make content about food, and then there was no holding back. Then our graphs really shot up. So 4 years of experimentation with no money, because people, again, might be fooled by the larger rounds of the last 2 years. The first 4 years, there was nothing. There was no horizon. Every 3 months, we ran out of money. Every 3 months, you had to figure out where the next 3 months of funding was going to come from. What's the upside of that? The upside of that is that you have to think outside of the box, and you have to be very creative to actually make your thing and your products work, which I believe we did up to an extent, at least during those first 4 years. And it enabled us to raise a seed round from the US of about 2 million. And then we suddenly started to be able to do things. We could open an office in Tel Aviv and get a proper tech team in place. And all our hypotheses that we had, because if you have no money, the one thing you have is time to think. So we could hypothesize. Boy, could we hypothesize. Then they proved to be quite valid. And that's what enabled us to raise that first bigger round, I would say, the A round. And then really something unexpected happened. Everything worked, and everything worked to such a degree that the graphs almost went vertical. And that enabled that much bigger rounds of 2018. Now, user growth in its own right would never have been enough to secure money to this degree. You secure money to this degree because of it, to an extent, but also because of potential and because of a big industry where there is room and where there is an opportunity to maybe do something new. So you each have your own view of the travel world that you're all operating in. We have ours, and I think there's probably some consensus if you hear me out on this. So we look at the travel industry or travel products as very, I would say, rich on inspiration. There's a ton of websites and blogs and apps that do inspiration well. You're not short of them. You have the Instagrams of the world who do it with pictures. You have the old guidebooks, and you have a million online magazines. Like that's the situation you're in. But there is no real go-to website. That doesn't exist. And you would, I think, agree with me. There are very strong legacy brands like Lonely Planets and Time Out, but the younger generation is not necessarily wedded to them. They know of them, but they don't necessarily start there. They start on Instagram, they start in search. Or increasingly, as we have managed to, start that culture trip. Why do they start that culture trip? Not so clear at first, but now I think increasingly, I like to think, because the product is good, because the content is solid, because there is content for everywhere, and we dominate in many ways online search with quality content for all locations, it becomes actually relatively hard to not see us if you look for content or things to do or cultural stuff in a destination. So that was the first thing that the investment community picked up. These guys do content, they do it well, they can do a lot of it of good quality with very little resource. With more resource, they probably can do stuff of even higher quality and probably of even higher scale. So that was one tick. And there was a very strong, there still is, a very strong correlation between user growth and the content we produce, between content we produce about certain destinations and a certain type of user who would consume that content. So you have some predictability, all good. Still not a business that would attract 20 million in investment, let alone 80. I mean, there are no magazines or media properties who attract that kind of money. So we started to look, because we organize all our content by location or say destination, at travel as an industry that does one thing very well, we feel, which is booking. I mean, it's not hard to book something. The actual transaction is easy. And there are recognized and recognizable brand names ranging from Booking to Airbnb, TripAdvisor, Expedia. If I did a poll here, any and all of you would mention probably one of those four if I asked you, where do you book your travel? If I asked, where do you go for inspiration, it would be a lot more varied. Now, here's the thing. At the bottom of the funnel, these guys do an amazing job. Transaction, sorted. Brand awareness, sorted. At the top of the funnel, inspiration, a lot of outfits do an amazing job, but it's quite niche. It's not a go-to platform. And nobody, and that you know, nobody does both. Nobody does both well. If you can propose a model that actually has even a modest likelihood of doing both well, then you have a strong proposition. You still need a strong team, you still need everything to more or less work, but you're gonna have an opportunity to have a good shot at it. And that's what justifies, I believe, or what lies behind these rounds. The rounds in their own right, you can be blinded by it, you can be fooled by it too. It's not a goal in its own right, it's a means to an end. And our end is to be that product that all of you hopefully next year would have heard about. You may not all use it, but we're actually striving to 100% penetration, so to speak. Impossible as that might sound, we will not make that, but that's what we aspire to. That if you think travel, you think culture trip. At least if you're below 30. Now hopefully increasingly if you're below 40 and below 50 and so on. So that's the game, and that's the opportunity. Thinking about it slightly differently again, and the numbers don't really matter, it's more the message here. How do Booking.com, Airbnb, Expedia, how do they get users? How do they end up at these websites? They end up at these websites because these companies pay a fortune to Google in paid search, to appear at least when you're looking for a destination. Because their content is mutually interchangeable. You write about a hotel, I mean, the basic info about a hotel is not unique. It will not naturally surface. So they pay. What do they pay? 5 billion a year is what Booking.com forks out every year again. Airbnb, less, because they have a stronger brand. They have probably more sort of brand love and belonging amongst consumers or users, but still hundreds of millions. We, if you think about it, attract nearly 20 million monthly uniques now at a fraction of the cost. It's marginal. So again, this goes into the reasoning and rationale as to why we managed to raise this amount of money. Now what else did we do and what else do we know? So I already said we can make content, we know how to do it, we know how to, through content, make a great product and have users coming to our website and apps and social through it, and there's no reason why that wouldn't continue. If our challenge or our self-imposed challenge is 100% penetration, for lack of a better number, we could probably come not that far off from that. So we know how to attract users and we know what it costs. We now want to get these users also to transact with us. Now, for that to not be a fantasy, we needed to test out a lot of stuff and we needed to learn. So how do we look and think at this industry or at this consumer proposition? Internally, we talk ad nauseum about the trip cycle and the travel funnel. The travel funnel, I think you all know. I mean, you indeed, well, at some point you consider going somewhere, you're looking for inspiration, or you're getting inspired just spontaneously. That will go on to looking a bit more concretely at the destination you have settled on, and ultimately, of course, you will need to book it. You will then go out of that funnel again, though. You'll go on the trip. And you'll be a little bit off the trip. Ideally, you will linger a little bit. You will think about where you've been. And then you go back into what we internally somewhat unromantically call no plans, as in your natural state. You're living your life. We, with our content, which is mapped to any and all of the stages of the trip cycle and the travel funnel, are there with you on that whole cycle, on that whole funnel. We have opportunities to engage with you much earlier than a Booking.com would have or a TripAdvisor would have. The data we have are amazing. I mean, I might not share them with you, but they are amazing. We know what every French person who comes to the website has looked at in the past 8 years. We know that, and that gives us so much leverage because we know that for every vertical that we have on the site, for every location we have on the site. So again, this is a repeat of what I just said. Content mapped to every stage, a full funnel opportunity. And this is how the product is now looking. This is amazing. To me, this is amazing, but that's also because I'm inside, of course, and I know the early versions. This is not so easy to build. The creative we have in the company is just amazing. This is not how it's meant to look if you just think it up. So we want our users to be inspired, discover new places, and get excited. Guidebooks used to do that for you. For those of you who are old enough, your first port of call, probably, when you were thinking of going somewhere, was to go to Waterstones or any bookstore to pick up a guidebook and flick through it and look at the pictures, probably hold them close to your face because they were fairly small. That's kind of how it went. And then the guidebook was actually quite comprehensive. It wasn't up to date, but you didn't care because that was all it was. And it was your first inspirational window. That in itself has not really, again, successfully gone online to one go-to platform. Preparing your travel, getting inspired should be fun. That part is not fun today. That part is many websites, many spreadsheets, many notepads, many conversations. Not easy at all. And every one of us values travel more than anything else these days. In the Maslow pyramid, travel suddenly has shot up, maybe like a house and a car and a garden did 20 or 30 years ago. Travel is right there. Travel and food, key parts of any young person's identity. So we work with that. And we make this what we think beautiful products that people can indeed then get pleasure from in that stage of preparation. And we want them to plan. Again, this is not easy today. This is spreadsheets. This is notepads. We are building a product that does draw you in early on in your journey or in your trip cycle, and that really lets you plan this with us. With a map and a wish list, you can do a whole lot of things, and we've recently launched these features, and the data have been amazing. Anybody who engages with these features, as in maps, building wish lists where you plan your trip and you start to put it all together, come back a lot within a month, like multiple times, and the correlation then with actually booking, again, is toweringly high. As I said, to ultimately book with us. So again, why is this not just a pipe dream? We did this, or we have been doing this for the past year or so, maybe a bit more, where we have been sending people off to affiliates, as we call it. So people can consume all that content, get excited, start to plan their trip by remembering the content. So we now have built product features to make that easier. But that they have the intent to travel and to transact, we do know. We do know that because today we send them off to booking.com and TripAdvisor, hotels.com. So we know. It's not an idea. They are there to ultimately travel. So when we started to see that, we thought like, okay, could we aim really big? And can we bring this within the Culture Trip platform? Because if you like our brand and you're so familiar with it, it can be visually and user experience-wise a bit disappointing to then end up at, say, for all the merit it has, hotels.com or booking.com or Airbnb. So we wanted to bring that inside because we feel that we have all the pieces of the puzzle. So we started working with CodeGen and indeed integrate now via APIs an inventory of hotels. And we have another sales team, of some of whom are here too, who make actually direct contracts with places to stay providers, as in hotels. So if you are a hotel owner or you work in a hotel, come and talk to them. They will equally be at the exit, probably equally maniacally waving magazines around, but go talk to them. And we're focusing ourselves, because we have content for everywhere, we had to narrow it down a little bit, having some focus. We went very wide for a long time, only to now really wrap our arms around a more focused direction. And we've settled on, broadly speaking, 43, 45 priority locations. Of course, we have, as said, content for everywhere, and everybody is welcome to engage with us for any and every destination. But if you are having hotels or you provide experiences in any of those, do please come talk to us, and we can bring you on our property. As said, we are more than room nights. We're a great deal about inspiration and a fun experience. We also want to go beyond places to stay and offer experiences, tours. We can build packages. We have activities that you can book. So all of this, as you can probably tell by now, is building towards that full funnel opportunity, that winner takes all thing. What that also takes, though, is time. You don't build that overnight. We were very patient, partly out of necessity with no resource, but we were very patient over the years to learn what we had to learn on the content creation field. We are equally patient now with learning what we need to learn in the booking sphere. This is a big opportunity. We're not in any rush to throw this onto the market and mess it up. We're taking this step by step, learning a lot from the data, getting amazing talent in the team, and step by step we feel we are getting there. So these are some of the experiences that we've been hosting on the site: jazz and spoken poetry, photo tours, food tours, you name it. This is a very interesting space, as you know, attract large funding rounds as well, the Klooks and the Get Your Guides of the world. But similarly, they have expensive user acquisition because it's the same paid search model, or maybe in Klook's case there's an element of discount and flash sales, but it's the same model as the big OTAs. Our model is different. Content first, and from content, all good things happen. So this is our travel sales team. You might know some of these people. Again, most of them are here, and by all means, go talk to them. Our team, as you have figured out by now, our commercial teams are split across London and New York, but quite a bunch of us who are normally in the New York office are here this week to indeed speak to as many people as possible and do some business. So we have some roles. I mean, there's a big pipeline of applications, but if this is one of you, or you know people, good quality people, we're always looking, we're always growing. Do get in touch. Deepo, our head of recruitment, is here as well. We'll equally be at the exit to have your pick as to who you want to talk to. And tonight we're holding an event. For now we're at full capacity, but again, should you like to join us, do feel free to talk to any and all of us there at the exit, and we see if we can add you to the guest list. This is happening at the Good Hotel, not too far from here. The Good Hotel also being a hotel on our website, of course. So that's all I have to say in this format. I know there's a Q&A now with Steve, and whatever you want to ask me, I'll try to answer. Thank you very much for your attention.
Please come and join me. And as Chris mentions, we will be glad to hear your questions from the audience. We're delighted to have back this year Slido, slido.com. Which gives you the opportunity, I think we can put it on the screen with the hashtag, the opportunity to post questions on Slido. Just go to that. You don't need to register. You don't need to download an app. Just go to the site, put in the hashtag WTM19 and post your questions, and they will pop up on my iPad here. And at the end, we'll have a roving mic for some questions as well. So, Chris.
Hello.
Thank you for that. You've had a busy 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
How are you? As a psychiatrist, in the psychiatrist chair, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, which is an answer you don't often get from your patients.
No, indeed.
But I definitely feel great. I feel great because of the learnings we had and the place we've arrived at. It was not, as you can figure out, an easy journey. It's not meant to be. But no, feeling great.
Yeah. I've been very interested in your background as a psychiatrist when it comes to creating content, trying to get inside the minds of people. What do they want to do? Tackle them when they're ready, learn all about them. But I'd just like to read a quote out, which I read in Travel Weekly, which from you. Tell me if it's not entirely accurate. As a psychiatrist, you can only deal with one person at a time. Over a career, you might see a few thousand patients, but I felt I lacked overall impact. Now, if I see people suffering emotional illness or stress, I have the power to intervene and do something about the social aspects. What I'm doing with Culture Trip could potentially have a lot more of an impact. That's quite a statement. That's still your underlying belief in what you're doing, is that well-being, that positive approach.
Yes, very much so, actually. I have to add that wasn't immediately clear to me from the beginning, the impact piece. There was always a desire, and people who met me in the early days will testify to that. It sounded more like, I think, like a charity at first than an actual business, because my whole itch was very much that non-Western cultures were not well represented in the mainstream. If you go to, say, Waterstones, as you will remember, there was a bookstore at first, yes, what we were. So if you go to Waterstones and you wanted to get inspired, say, by finding a novel set in Mozambique, good luck to you. Good luck to you, because the books are organized alphabetically, so that's not going to help. The staff at that point, I don't know, I haven't been there recently, was 99% Caucasian, for sure. Yeah. So they would have no standing knowledge on any literature that wasn't pertaining to that. You had a tiny, minuscule bookshelf there called Black Literature. Aside from the awful name, it wasn't offering all that much. Yeah. So I felt that was not quite right, and that with an online bookstore you could correct for that. So that social goal was there from the beginning. Gradually then, of course, with attracting quite so many users, you start to realize, like, heck, we actually have a huge responsibility here, right? We're speaking to 12 times 20 million people, theoretically, per year. That's 250 million people.
Yes.
We better make use of that.
But when you have to switch it from your personal crusade into a business model.
Yeah.
Is that diluting your initial sort of impetus to approach travel in this way?
No, I would actually argue the opposite, because with making an actual business and creating opportunities, if you like, for users to travel, with creating opportunities to employ people, you can actually have a far deeper impact. You can also innovate.
I think there's three main themes have emerged in travel and tourism this year. Accessibility, environmental, and well-being. So the well-being certainly fits into that sort of culture you're talking about as well.
Yes.
And the environmental side, though, that this is always going to be the crunch of the travel industry. We promote flying, we promote cruising, and both of them, airports, planes, and cruise ships, are not the best. How do you argue the case for travel in that context?
Yeah, very good question, and a very live issue in the company, because you have no choice as a travel brand or travel product to pronounce on this and to have a viewpoint. And as a company we have viewpoints.
Yes.
We feel strongly about things. No different on sustainability. Now, what are you meant to do? What can you do as a travel company? Because you are, after all, sending people in the sky quite a bit, potentially, in some cases onto cruise ships, and that comes with a footprint, as we also know. So we are thinking quite deeply about this. One aspect we feel we can really help with is over-tourism. I mean, with having quite so many destinations and quite so much variation in destination that we offer, we can probably divert quite a few people from these overcrowded hotspots.
Yeah.
That we can do a number of things. Because it is so important, we actually have a company-wide hackathon later this year, where the whole company will down tools for a day and focus exclusively on that. What can we do to help with this? What can we do? Where do we need to make changes to our product? What should we pronounce on? How can we make an impact?
So you can't not promote New York because it's overcrowded, or Barcelona. You can't go that way. So what's your initial thinking before that hackathon of how you would want it to develop next year?
Yeah, there is various concrete things, like offsetting air miles, of course, we can do. As you say, we cannot stop people from going to New York, nor would we desire to. But if we can make at least one of your trips that you would normally take to New York a trip to Milwaukee, then that's a win.
Okay. So interesting about moving into a business model and environment now, moving away from the theory into you've got the numbers and you've started to book yourselves. So I noticed that you've hit your target of going to 40 cities very recently, moved on from 12 cities initially. You had 10 hotels per city initially. The quote was, the expectation is to ramp up quickly with 10,000 properties available in the coming months, flights to be added at a later stage. Is that still the plan for next year?
All on the map.
And are those figures still accurate?
They might be. We might do better, we might do worse.
Okay. But as you say, a lot of the stuff is still booking.com, so it's low visibility at the moment, your own booking. But who are the people coming to you as opposed to going to booking.com? Is there any difference between your clients there?
I don't know their demographics in detail, of course. We don't have access to that. I think booking.com serves a mass market. We serve so far at least, a good bulk of curious millennials. Not to say that we don't have people above 35, but our sweet spot seems to be there. People who think globally. I think Booking.com is broad and mass. We are not.
Yeah. But Booking.com, as you say, has the scale. When you were talking about it earlier, about your uniqueness, going from the content point of view and being able to book as well and all the sort of funnels connected, it sort of struck me that the common sense thing would be for you to merge with Booking.com, give them fantastic content with this massive booking engine behind you. That's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen at this point, no.
Initially. Okay. Now, Slido's working very well, and I don't want to just put my point of view, so I'm very keen to hear your questions. Here's a good one from Emma. Your articles seem to be very SEO-led, and I think that's a fair thing to say. How does social trends, for example, flight sharing, eco-friendly travel, lead your article and social content? Good question, Emma. Your SEO is very strong. You're getting a lot of attention through Google as a result. Is that affecting your choice of the content you are putting up on the site?
It's a good question, right? I mean, and it's an interesting one too, because the irony is that for the first probably 6.5, 7 years, we did not have any SEO team. Our content just happened to do well in SEO because it's authentic content, giving people answers to questions that they actually have. Where should I go? What should I see? What should I know about this place?
Yeah.
There was no grand scheme behind that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we look more at optimizing on our efforts. And an example I can give you, where data come into play with this is, should we, for example, write an article on best restaurants in the London Bridge area, then we know from Google data and our own data that the demand for restaurants around Borough Market is maybe 10,000 times as high as demand for restaurants around London Bridge, even if they are only 300 meters apart. So this is an example where we would think about SEO, where we would think about demand, to make a choice as to what we want our local creator to write about. And it's a win-win for everybody, because if quite so many people look for restaurants around Borough Market and not for restaurants around London Bridge, why produce it? Yeah. As a creator, it's better for you and more fun for you to know that your piece is going to be read. And after all, for us, as always, it's users first. So there is an element of demand-led for sure, and there should be.
I think I read somewhere as well that you are using AI, artificial intelligence, to help dictate the type of content as well. Is that true?
It's definitely true. There's various stages again in which and where you can take that. I mean, as soon as you have a rich data set and you have patterns in your data and therefore pattern recognition, you can work with that. So how do we work with AI? We start to test things out in the recommendation space, like others do, like Netflix does, like Spotify does, like some of the travel players do. And as I said, we have a very rich and interesting set of data. But equally, we are very interested and curious to see, can we automate certain aspects of the creative process? Can we automate aspects of, say, copy editing? Because the same writers make the same mistakes or stylistic choices. The same copy editor corrects the same mistakes or slightly off stylistic choices. So you can probably take some of that out of the process and automate. Very exciting, actually, because AI has not really properly cross-fertilized with, I would say, media really, and not with travel either. And in this opportunity here, it would cross-fertilize with both.
But AI would just point to restaurants in Borough Market rather than London Bridge, wouldn't it? Because you're going to get more traction.
I think you could get a bit finer than that, because all our content, we are what we call unbundling. So all these recommendation articles are all split in individual items. Every paragraph becomes a unit of content that we can serve to you via notifications, that we can serve to you as part of a personalized wish list.
Okay. Question, anonymous question. How do you cover contentious destinations? Do you avoid covering them? And leading on from that, China. You mentioned China there. What's your view? Are you going to take what China tells you to do, or what's your approach to contention?
We haven't been told by China what to do, nor do they necessarily have a spot to tell us that for our English language properties. So there's no real challenge as of yet there. Broadly speaking, Culture Trip has always been about showcasing what makes a place and its culture special and unique, and its people, and it's always been positive. We don't do critical review, really. We showcase what we think is great about the place, and we don't lecture.
Okay. Millennials, key market for you. You hope to get them more mature as well. A lot of these first-time travelers, or are you kicking into people who have got a bit of knowledge but want to be educated and pushed into areas they didn't know about before?
A bit of both, probably. And also we see very good traction, like extremely good traction in Gen Z. I mean, you can all test that. If you go to a hostel in Southeast Asia, pretty much everybody will be using Culture Trip.
Obviously, the big reason there's been a lot of interest in Culture Trip in the last 12 months is you've got $80 million, $102 million altogether. I think it's possibly the biggest investment in a single commercial travel company or a startup. You're after, I believe, another 30 million, but your figures to year end of September 2018 was £500,000 in revenue. There's a massive gap there. How quickly do you think you can bridge that gap and still be viable and in business?
I mean, we are a fast growth startup. I think we aren't the biggest round collector in travel. I mean, there's the Klook and Get You guides. in order to grow fast and create visibility, that will take some resource. Will we ever be self-sustainable? You would sincerely hope so.
Yes.
Do we prioritize towards it at this very point in time? Maybe not just yet, because we have so much traction to capitalize on. As I said, I think in my presentation, we know how to bring users to the property. We start to know how to convert them into customers. This is the game we're playing in now, in the next 12 months, to try and see indeed to what extent can you make users customers.
Sure.
We're very optimistic about it.
Okay, another good question, another anonymous. So feel free to put your name in. Really pleased to give you a shout out if you come up here. Do you have, you probably haven't approached this yet, do you have dedicated strategies for each social platform? With more requirement for paid investment on social, how are you approaching this for 2020? Do you see them all separately? Do they all contribute to the
It's a really good question. You shouldn't have asked this anonymously, because we would actually like to talk to you about it. It's,
well, whoever it was, make yourself known after.
I mean, we have entered various social channels at different points in time. We were very early in our journey on Facebook, and with success to match that. Video then propelled massive growth on Facebook in particular. Instagram came next up. Pinterest is still relatively untouched by us. YouTube is relatively untouched by us. We have a great brand team who tries to pull that all together, and we have a great growth team who tries to pull it all together to cohesively take it forward, because from a brand awareness perspective it is extremely powerful. From a conversion into funnels, probably not as strong as conversions via search or via direct traffic would work.
Video, as you say, has proved very powerful for you. You're creating your own video, which is a very expensive and time-consuming thing to do. Are you open to user-generated video using UCG as well as your own?
We have done a little bit of that on our social channels, so we're not averse to that. In general, we are, over time, not entirely averse to UGC. For now, our PGC, as it is called, professionally generated content, still has a lot of scalable juice in it, so we will continue to do that. To reach real massive scale, maybe in a year or in 2 years, we might start looking at it.
Okay. Are we all allowed to be content creators for you?
Are you all allowed to be? Maybe not all. No, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to. Everybody gets vetted, and nobody can today publish on the platform.
Sure.
Just like that.
Obviously, a question from a former print journalist, might be Mark. You value inspirational content, but don't seem to value journalists based on reported pay per word of 0.03p. How do you marry up the two? Is this true?
Can you rephrase that for me?
Yeah, you value inspirational content, but don't seem to value journalists. This is clearly from a print journalist, not me. Based on reported pay of 3p per word. Is this true? And
I don't know the source of that pay rate. I would definitely contest that. I know the pay rates today are highly competitive, and we have very good retention amongst our writers, so I don't recognize it.
Question for Lou. Excuse me. When Culture Trip makes a recommendation, why should people trust your recommendations? How do you make the recommendations relevant to the user?
Yeah, good question.
Based on trust, surely. You have to be.
Trust plays a role, for sure. Big role in anybody who recommends anything. I think there's a couple of things here. So there's a working group who has been focused on that in the past few months to indeed make that also clearer to the user as to what goes into a recommendation, and putting it there, and what doesn't, and to what extent that is objective and informed. So as you know, our community are local creators, creative people who live locally, and we're now starting to play with who these people are and what we allow them to technically recommend. Why do we feel positive? Why should you trust us even at this point? You should trust us at this point because of the user reviews we're getting. I mean, if so many people keep coming back and look at the user ratings in the app, clearly we're getting something right there with what we recommend.
You don't have reviews on the site though, do you? From
no, not
users?
At this point. No, this might come.
Okay. Is it from Cyprus? Is your plan to offer the full funnel for hotel bookings? Well, you clearly are going to do that on Culture Trip, like Book and Google, Trivago Express. But presumably flights is going to follow, cruises might be a bit more problematic, experiences take time to wire in those people. But of course you're going to aim for that full booking package, aren't you?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, of course we're running out of time very quickly. I noticed a quote, your last tweet, you're talking about a deep sea diver who's dived in all 5 oceans. He's climbed every big mountain peak. He's got a lot of money, but he's got a lot of spirit as well. And his quote, which you repeated. I come from a philosophy that says we're put here not just to survive or even just to be comfortable, but to contribute in some way. That's clearly a philosophy you hold on to.
Correct.
Very good.
Thank you for that.
Well, 1-2 questions from the floor, and that will be it. We've got a roving mic. Anybody who hasn't got round to Slido who would like to ask a question? We have a lady at the front. Do we have a roving mic, please? Second row in, fourth seat from the right. Thank you.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for talking. It's very interesting. I'm just curious. I come from an editorial travel background and now I'm in video production. Where do you book your holidays, and why do you book your holidays on those platforms?
Where I go today?
Yeah.
Of course, I will use my own product. And I know I give a bit of money to the affiliate partners, but I'm happy to do so.
Okay. But before that, I mean, obviously through the years, where would you go to book your holidays and why? What was your inspiration when you'd go online and looking to travel? Just curious, because obviously it's your business. And
Sure. I think, there's the two things here, I suppose. For inspiration, as you gathered maybe in the beginning, I'm a very avid reader of fiction, so that was where all my inspiration would start. Niche as it might be, that's how it worked for me. Or I would know something about the place and I wanted to know more, I suppose. So that drove it. Also have 2 kids, so it also was informed by what I would have liked them to understand about the world. In fact, that was probably the biggest factor in the past 15 years. For booking, I would go to indeed booking.com or Expedia, the usual suspects. And again, like all of you, I'm sure, talk to 1 million people and ask for recommendations and all the rest of it, and finding it incredibly time-consuming. But still getting such a high return on that time consumed, because I love, as you can imagine, of course, travel a great deal. And my children have grown up to be very global thinking, I feel, by having gone around the world very much off the beaten track, making sure we cover somewhat major cultural destinations along the way.
Good. I'm going to call it there. I've just noticed we're on red already, so we're 3 minutes over time. I would like to thank you, Chris, for being very straightforward, fascinating product. If they can sustain the social responsibility, the cultural drive, and not become just another mass booking engine, I wish you success.
Thank you.
And I'd like to invite you to put your hands together for the time for Dr. Chris Nuntz. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Steve. That was very
Thanks for your
interesting.
help.
Thank you.